Hello, I'm Ian,
And I'm Darren.
and welcome to the Average Bikers in a Cave, a show where a group of bikers chat and share opinions about all things motorbike, from news, reviews, interviews, and the big questions. If you like what you hear, then be sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a review.
Today is episode 3, and along with our usual catch-up, there are a few new bikes that we'll discuss in the news, and we'll tackle this week's big question. How do you buy yours? Ways to pay for your next bike. This week's episode is sponsored by Afterground, an exceptional drone, wedding, portraiture and events photography and videography company that specialises in capturing video and images on the ground and in the air in a style that is modern yet timeless, interesting and vibrant, with a focus on exhilarating moments and pure fun. Using their experience, skills and knowledge, they will work with you to ensure your videos and photos are exactly the way you want them. For more information or to chat to the team, head over to www.afterground.com or check out their Facebook page. So, check in. What's been happening this weekend?
Do you know, it's been a pretty quiet week. I've been annual leave for my other thing that I do, so, and my wife's made me work in the house all week, so, to be honest, I know. Although I am currently constructing a Ducati out of Technic Lego, which is quite good.
If you'd have just left it at that, we'd have been mightily
I know, I
impressed.
shouldn't have really said the Technic Lego, which is sorry, I'm just currently constructing a Ducati. You can edit that out, can't you?
I'll just cut that bit out.
And we're just going to take a wee bit of time, which is good fun. We were just talking there about how many M's we said, so M.
Episode 2 should have been named the M episode, which obviously
Episode
the
2.
episode 2.
So yeah, from a check-in point of view, very little. I have been having a wee look at the new Triumph Bonneville range. We'll talk about more about that in the news, I think. But just kind of thinking, what would I kind of go for? And what's quite good is we're thinking about. I don't know if I should say this because this will be a surprise for him. John, if you're listening, can you close your ears just for a wee second, please? We are thinking of for his birthday, getting him his CBT and all that sorted.
Oh, nice.
Because he will not go off his backside. He wants to do it, but he'll not go off his backside and do it. So,
If you want to know the scores, John, look
if you
away
want
now.
to- yeah, please look away now. Yeah, there we go. What about yourself, Dan?
Pretty much the same, mate, other than the annual leave and then being made to work at home. It's See, I told you, we're really good at those.
I think now that we've got it in our head,
I know, it's just there.
let's change it to P. P. No, maybe not.
No. It's been work's been quite busy this week, so that's kind of kept us preoccupied a little bit with some stuff. Kind of continuing to look into some of the camera stuff that we've got upcoming.
There's a new drone
Which-
out as well,
which
which
we-
looks quite
we-
exciting.
Yeah, which we would have did today had it not been the fact that the lovely blue skies that we've had all week mysteriously went grey for some reason. So
And there was that kind of strange kind of wet stuff fell out of the sky this morning.
yeah, that kind of, I don't know what they call that stuff, but yeah, that stuff that kind of gets you.
The day I
Aye.
take my bike to work and leave it outdoors overnight is the day that
It gets. Yeah,
process.
we need to do an episode on rain gear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely living in this part of town. But the only other thing I've done this week is a friend of mine, his wife, who, I mean, I'll not mention names, but his wife bought him a CBT certificate for, not an actual certificate to say, there you go, you passed, I did it for you, but a kind of gift voucher to do his CBT,
That's good to know.
right? And I'm going, God, she's a keeper. So he's not even sat the CBT yet because obviously things are still being shut and all that kind of good stuff. But he's already been looking at his first big bike, and I'm going, that's my kind of guy.
Yeah, good on
That's
him.
it. Good on you, fella. So he's been pinging me back questions kind of this week about Triumph Tigers versus GSEs and what would be a good bike for him to look at. And I've kind of sent him off to look at some YouTube reviews and all that kind of good stuff. So other than that, it's been fairly quiet, which isn't too bad. Next week should be a bit busier. We'll get exciting stuff next week. And, well, I've got exciting stuff next week. But, aye, other than that, it's just fun.
I'll not go into what I do because it's especially if folk are eating while they're listening. So
we did say this before we started that check-in was going to be quiet this week because it has literally been just flat out work. And
although I did notice on the way here that the Triumph Glasgow showroom has got its for sale sign up, the building. So they are definitely moving premises by the looks of it.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. I know it was announced, so that they were going to move premises, but I don't know where they're going to move to. It might be worth looking at for a further episode. And
That's interesting, because I would have thought it's obviously people listening. Some may know, some may not.
Yeah.
But the local Triumph garage is in a kind of an industrial estate, an industrial unit, and it's coupled with Ducati, and then across the road
franchise
we've got
owners that
yeah,
do them, right?
and then across the road you've got Harley Davidson. So it's like a little bike corner of that whole estate. So I'm surprised they're moving at that one, because they're to me they're two different types of.
Yeah, and it's super visible from the M8, so it's like
you can't miss it.
You can't miss it.
You cannot miss it.
But I do believe from a couple of the guys I was talking to about it, they know the guys in Triumph and in Harley say that the rates are just horrendous.
Oh, is that what? Well, that might know. And because they are fairly new buildings.
They're fairly new, and I think there was maybe some sort of agreement to share with the, because Harley was in there as well. But obviously, I think they're getting a wee bit of kind of financial things, and then they get bought over by another franchise owner. So that person's obviously looked at the books and went, actually, do you know what? I appreciate your helping prop up the Harley side of things, but probably find a better location for you. Whether it's still within there, but just off the main road, because the rates just
because it's quite a big industrial estate. There is loads of bits up,
but then there's Linwood, which is not far away, which is all car garages. Could maybe do a wee bit of bike presence, and there's a few places kind of popping up, so it could be anywhere.
I watch this space. We'll keep an eye on that one.
Keep an eye on that one, let you know.
It's I had another thing there when we were talking about that, and it's completely gone from my head. It'll probably pop up halfway through this, and I'll be like, "Oh, wait a minute, I remember what it is," and it'll just, that's what it was.
There you go.
We get a notification this week that the IAM guys have been given the go ahead to go back to doing, because obviously we've came out we're allowed to kind of move about the country a bit more freely now. So the IAM guys have started the proceedings, first couple of Zoom sessions to kind of go through, just so that we can all familiarise ourselves with each other again, and some of the kind of basic stuff that you might have forgot if you've not been riding. And then I think observe rides start middle of May. So yay, normality ensues.
That's something I'll need to get into.
Aye. I think you'd enjoy that. I think you really would enjoy that.
A few years ago, when I had my Suzuki and I was out kicking about, and a guy that used to do that coming out with me and did that, literally followed behind me and kind of gave me pointers and all that kind of stuff, and I thought it was brilliant. Really, really helpful.
It's made, for others, a lot to learn. I definitely find it makes my riding more enjoyable. Because not only are you enjoying the ride, but you're adding that technical kind of level to your riding. So it's quite clever. Right, good stuff. See, for all we didn't have that much to talk about, we've actually got quite a bit in there. Good stuff.
And now, the news.
I'll go first, since I'm going to play with it. When I say play with it, I think I've got 15 minutes to go and sit on it, touch it, and then they've got another 10 minutes to wipe it down before somebody else comes in. The joys of COVID. We kind of alluded to it a bit last week, but Harley's new Pan America is out on its, I think they're calling it a virtual tour, but it's actually in the showroom, so I don't see how it's virtual when you actually go into the showroom and play with it, but there you go.
Unless you don't actually physically get to touch it.
I'll be raging if I've got to sanitise myself, get dressed at my usual midweek attire.
Harley Spearmint Rhino Davidson. You can look where you can't touch.
What's the point in that? But yeah, so their new Pan America is out, and this one's intrigued me for a while, purely because I know a couple of guys that work in Harley, and they had saw it when they were over in Milwaukee, and they were really kind of excited by it, which, again, we've said this before, but it is Harley's first proper adventure bike, which seems contradictory. However, Harley are very keen to remind us that when they first started making motorbikes, there wasn't tarmac roads and things like that, so their bikes have always been adventure bikes. I don't think that's what constitutes an adventure bike in this day and age. However,
if you think about some of your average Harley riders, you know what I mean? There's no way they would take their Harley off-road.
Definitely not on any kind of loose gravel, because and then it goes. And then it takes 2 years to lift it back up. It's the first modern adventure bike, shall we say. So it's a new engine that they've got in it. It's a new Revolution Max 1252cc V-twin engine that's in it. It produces 150 horsepower, which again, first time I think Harley's ever told you what the actual brake horsepower is, because they normally they always more focus on the torque. The torque in this thing is 94 pound-foot of torque. That's at about 6,500 RPM. So to put it into perspective, the rev limit on this new engine is twice what the stock Milwaukee 8 is. So either the 107 or the 114 that you find in kind of modern sport glides or street specials or any of the new Milwaukee 8 versions. This thing's twice the rev limit on that thing. So they're definitely making a big change with these new engines. Now, Harleys have always been a bit heavy, shall we say. Characteristically heavy, but fear not, they have put this thing on a mad diet. It's 245 kilograms wet. Now that's 4 kilograms lighter than a GS. That's ambition on their part.
What's it made of? Candy floss?
I'll tell you in the next episode when I've actually maybe got to touch it. There is a special model, which is slightly heavier at 258, but on the grand scheme of things, 258 kilograms is not that heavy for an adventure bike. My 850 GSA, I think, was around about that, and it was only an 800cc or 850cc engine that was in that. So it's tall. It's about 890 millimeter seat height, which again we always refer to. However, for an extra £600, you can opt for what they're calling ARH, or adaptive ride height, which allows the bike to automatically lower by 50 millimeters when you come to a stop. So as the bike rolls up towards the set of lights, just before you go to put your foot down, the actual bike lowers the seat height by 50 millimeters so you can get your foot down.
The Citroen BX.
The Citroen BX of adventure bikes.
Did that last week, didn't we?
It was either last week or we've had that chat kind of here in the cave when we weren't recording. Yep. I like that, because it does, because you mean even at 890 that's tall. You mean even I find that tall, and albeit I've got shorter legs, but I'm still 6 foot. You mean I find that 890 is a struggle.
You know, I can contemplate sitting on a bike with a leg like that.
I know, it's nuts. And that's just you're looking at it and going, wow, fancy electrics on a Harley. That never happened. What happened there? You mean they've got somebody else in to build these things? So what you get in terms of electronics is you get hill hold control, which I always thought is a bit of a fad until the first time I used it on my bike and went, this is amazing, because you can just double tap the brake and it stops and it automatically, it's like a handbrake. It's genius. It comes with cruise control, corner and ABS, lean sensitive traction control, tyre pressure monitor, semi-active suspension, ride mode, 6-inch full colour touchscreen TFT. It's on a Harley. It's like, I'm sure they've done it somewhere else and bought it. Now, here's the kicker. The starting price for this thing is £14,000.
Sorry, I think you're going to need to repeat that. Sorry.
£14,000. Now, that's the base entry model, granted, right? You would probably buy the special because it comes with everything you would probably want to add on there anyway, which is, again, your kind of adaptive headlights and your active semi-suspension and all that. If you're going to use it like properly off-road, or you just want to have that, you might have it there just in case. Exactly. And that starts at 15.5 grand. That's mental. I'd
have added at least £5,000 onto that price.
Mental. Considering, I think bog standard GSEs start about 14.5 and you get nothing on it. By the time you spec it up, you can expect to pay about 18 grand. Absolutely mental. But again, the rumours were about 18 months ago that they'd taken the best parts of other adventure bikes and kind of mocked them up into one kind of overall bike, and that kind of seems to be the case. But it looks at, again, once I've seen it and actually had to sit on it and play with it, and don't get me wrong, I'll be first in the queue for a test drive.
I might have to try and fashion myself some very high heeled boots so that I can get on it and put my feet.
Well, I'll let you know just how tall it actually feels.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things out there that I think the GS feels quite tall, but yet compare it next to the Africa Twin, the old Africa Twin, not the new 1100 that's slightly smaller, but the old Africa Twin. The GS was tiny. The Africa Twin was huge. Even I struggled to get a leg over. Do you know what I mean? If you pardon the expression. But yeah, but just in case you haven't figured out. I'm genuinely excited by this because I do think this. If they've got it all right and they've got it, if it reads and sounds as good as it actually is, then I think this could be a little shocker. I think the only thing that might let it down is the Marmite looks and the fact that people.
You said that last week about the looks.
Aye,
It doesn't look like a
no,
bog, you know what I mean? So
no, and a couple of people that I've spoke to that have seen it in the flesh, albeit and it's not its prototype, but almost before it went full production, have said it looks better in the flesh than what it does in the pictures. In the pictures, it does have that, I want to say Mac lorry look about it. You know, that way it's kind of big and square and boxy.
Yeah.
But we'll see. You know what I mean? We'll see what it looks like. I'm feeling I'm feeling excited about that because then it means you can have an adventure bike but still be part of the hog community. And having been part of it, the hog community is a great thing.
Aye.
It's definitely one of the things that I like about Harley is that whole community. And you mean they are a great guy. Well, at least their chapter is. You mean they're a great bunch of guys. They plan a lot of events and they do a lot of tours and all that kind of stuff. And it just has that buzz about it.
Mm-hmm.
You mean you can go into the coffee shop and those guys sitting and everybody's chatting. And I kind of miss that not having a Harley now. But this way you could have the best of both worlds and have that kind of proper modern adventure bike that's got all the gadgets on it and still be part of that community.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I'd be interested to see how it's taken up by
Aye.
that side of things. Absolutely.
So what else we got, Ian?
We've got the new Triumph Bonneville update. Triumph have updated their Bonneville range of modern classics with some improved suspension, brakes, new engines. So, but 20 years after they kind of re-emerged, Triumph have sold about nearly 375,000 Bonnevilles, which is pretty decent going.
It seems to have been there forever.
I know. I mean, it's like one of those bikes that I think, obviously I've got Triumph Street Cup, which is, kind of one of the Bonneville range, but, I don't think until I see them, I think it's a bit like that as well. If you don't see them in the flesh, you don't appreciate how lovely they are.
And I think if you don't hear one in the flesh, that's the one thing I
even coming in here, there was two guys walking along, just around the corner, and just as I come around the corner, you could just see them going, "Oh, what's that noise? What's that noise?"
I hadn't heard yours in a while until we obviously started our little adventure here.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when Nicola's uncle bought his last year and brought it round. And the minute it pulled into the drive, I went, "Oh, he's picked his new bike up." Knowing very well it was a Bonnie, because you can just tell.
Oh, I know, absolutely love it. The biggest change primarily is around the Euro 5 compliance. So they've got the new 1200cc engine, which keeps the same 78 brake horsepower and 77.5 pound-foot torque, but it's got a reduced emissions output. So they're obviously just making sure that they kind of tighten their boxes with that.
Aye, and for all we say it's 78 brake horsepower, that is pretty nippy on the wee Bonnies.
They're a light bike.
Because
They're
really
a pretty light bike. That mine's not near that, and it's fast enough for me. Absolutely.
Tron incident. Yep.
Tron. Yeah, don't talk about Tron. The weight off the engine, it revs slightly faster than its predecessor. In fact, the weight in general on the bike is pretty good news. They've reduced it by about 7 kilos. And
Which 7 kilos of a bike that was already light is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it still feels such a solid wee kind of beast.
Aye.
It's really good.
I think it's the fact that they are so compact.
Aye.
I don't mean they're small. I just mean they pack them really well. That sounds weird, I know, but it's just, it feels like a little small retro bike, even though it isn't.
Yeah,
I know. What I mean?
It's just got that kind of sense, and sometimes I kind of think back to, you look at something like the, films like Quadrophenia and all that, when they've got the mods, and then you've got the rockers coming up and they're retro, the other Bonneville type bikes, and you just think they've gone back to that age, but yeah, they've still got that lovely modern kind of sense about them.
Aye,
certainly things that.
Aye, and they're obviously, and as you say, they're new Euro 5 compliant.
Aye,
so that extends the life of the Bonneville yet again.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? As opposed to just letting it die, because we know with Euro 4 there's some bikes that are just like the Honda VFR. They're not updating it to be Euro 5 compliant, and it's an absolutely stunning thing.
I think it was our first episode I talked about the VFR.
Aye.
And, it's one of my bikes I would like to have at some point, just for a wee while. There's new Brembo calipers on it for upgraded braking, and there's been lots of wee tweaks. Cruise controls now coming as standard.
Good.
Although I've got my cruise control in mine, which is that wee plastic handle thing. Sits
The
on
wee
it.
thing.
It's
Oh,
brilliant.
brilliant.
If anybody's listening there and don't have that wee plastic handle, it's brilliant. It's absolutely great.
Ian's recommendation of the week.
Yep, the wee plastic
The
handle.
wee plastic hand.
There are model-specific tweaks across the bobber.
Still love the bobber.
I know, making the standard model more like the current bobber black, and also the Speedmaster is new forks and improved seats for rider and pillion.
Speedmaster's one I would like an actual go of.
Yes,
I would quite like a go of Speedmaster. I think it just the way it sits, the way you
that is your
that
that is your rocker quadrophenia
aye.
kind of let's go and beat up the mods type thing. Do you know what I mean? That's
I've seen a few folk riding them and I go, that looks comfy. That looks
I think that to me is this is maybe not the best way of how it sounds, but it's what a British person thinks of a bike the way an American thinks of a Harley. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you've got your British head on and you're thinking about a classic shaped British bike, you think.
I think that's a good point actually, because we've obviously talked about the Harley and we've talked about the new Triumph, and I think you're absolutely right. I think Harley is to America, Triumph is to the UK what Harley is to America. I think when you think British bike, I think everybody's first thought is Triumph.
Yeah, oh, totally. I mean,
Do you know what I mean?
it's almost like the Jaguar of bikes in the sense of just that iconic British brand.
Yep. Even down to the little Union Jack and half of the emblem.
I know, which is and it's all. I mean, my Triumph gloves have got the Union Jack on the kind of cuff of them, which is just like it's just iconic,
And on a completely unrelated note, the actual Kevlar denims are super light.
I've got them.
Oh, have you?
I've got two pairs. They're brilliant.
They're
brilliant.
Unbelievably light.
And the protection, it's brilliant.
Aye.
It really is. The D, was it D10 or D?
Aye, something like that.
I can't mean. But aye, super light, yeah. Brilliant. What we got next?
New KTM. We're just bike daft this week.
Aye, absolutely.
New KTM 1290 Super Duke R. Again, now don't get too excited. But this is the KTM's new off-road centric Super Adventure R, starting at $15,999. It's got a 1301.
More expensive than the Harley.
I know. I know. I literally just wrote my argument. Everybody should buy a Panamerica. Yeah, 1301cc liquid cooled V12 engine, 157 brake horsepower at 9,000 RPM, 101 foot-pound of torque, 880 millimeter seat height. Again, no for us short-legged individuals. Wet weight 221 kilograms, which is mega light.
That is light, isn't it?
For a 1290.
Yeah, that's
just. I think it's going to be like, you know what, half a shiny shovel. But probably the biggest change comes in the chassis. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what they've done. But after reading it twice, essentially it just sharpens up the cornering of the bike. Right. Again, I'm not going to insult any technical people on listening to a podcast by trying to explain it. Some little tweaks here and that are making it slightly lighter than the previous version, and there are some new additions, such as again the new 7-inch TFT, which comes with connectivity for your mobile, stuff like that. So I think they're just tweaking it slightly to bring it up. I think the biggest change is that change to the actual chassis. Just to make it that bit sharper, which is obviously ideal for the guys doing it or taking it pure proper off-roading. So yeah, nice new KTM.
And last bit of news I think we've got here, isn't it?
Yep.
It's the Dun case continues. So if anyone isn't aware of the case, I'll just explain roughly what it is. On the 27th of August 2019, 19-year-old Harry Dunn was unfortunately killed in a road traffic accident near the exit of RAF Crowton. Crowton, is that how you suppose?
Aye, Crowton. I think it's Crowton.
In Northamptonshire. And a car travelling in the opposite direction on the wrong side of the road collided with him. Harry died in hospital as a result of his injuries. The car was being driven by Anne Sakolas, the wife of a CIA operative living at the US Air Force station there. She admitted that she had been driving the car on the wrong side of the road, and CCTV footage seems to support this. And the day after, she was interviewed at home, and she declared she had diplomatic immunity, and the police apply to have this voided. Yeah. And then for the next 2 weeks, the USA and the UK Foreign Office debated diplomatic immunity. And then on the 15th of September that year, she left the UK on a US Air Force plane. And from there on out, it's been back and forth between the UK and the US over possible extradition so that justice can be looked at. Even Boris Johnson reached out directly to then President Trump. Still nothing. Anyway, the latest news: when the American State Department refused an extradition order, Harry Dunn's family started a civil case in the US. You know the Americans love their civil cases, you know.
And quite right.
And the Sakalis had tried to have the case dismissed on the grounds that holding the proceedings in the UK would be, and this is the quote, more convenient. A judge has dismissed that claim, as she's previously expressed concern she would not receive fair treatment if the trial was in the UK. The Dunn family continue with a civil claim and the battle to get justice for Harry.
It's a bit. It's one of those ones. Where do you start with that?
I know I can't even bear to think, you know, how you start with that. I feel for that family so badly.
I know.
And to not have the ability to have that level of justice served, I'm totally with the family on that. I think it's
whether things will change with obviously America's new president coming in. I have no idea, but I hope they get some sort of. You mean even in the last week, I think there's probably been more development on that.
Aye.
I think they agreed or tried to settle it outside of court. The Dunn family have said no chance.
It's not because it's not. It's not about the compensation for them. I know. We always think about the Americans and litigation and all that, and it is all about. And you'll hear all these settlement out of court things, but it's a very British thing.
Yep.
It's not about the money.
No, it's about justice.
It's about justice. And if there's a way that some things can, you know, diplomatic immunity is a convenient.
Why is it when we say that all I can think of, and you know what I'm going to say here, the guy at Lethal Weapon 2.
Well, of course, aye.
Which we're not obviously not walking with
diplomatic immunity.
Aye.
So that was not a good South African accent.
No,
and yours was his. So to be fair,
I'm fair.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think not try to make light of the situation. Obviously for them, I just think something has to be done, and somebody has to take a stand to change those types of things. You know,
I get you mean she was obviously in the wrong. Yeah. She admitted she was in the wrong. Mm-hmm. Why not just face the? You mean it's not? She's not as if she intentionally drove on the wrong side of the road.
No, absolutely
to
not.
Try and endanger people.
Think for a second she was.
And she was at the end of the day, she's going to need to live with that for the rest of her days, knowing fine well what happened.
But the family need to have some sort of closure and some sort of understanding that, you know. And if you've got a group of American lawyers turning around and saying you say nothing, you cannot say anything. I mean, I'm sure the woman actually probably wants to.
Aye, quite possibly.
Wants to sit down and hold her, you know, and say I'm really sorry, but you know, then you've got this American legal system terrified that litigation is going to come in and cost millions and millions, and you just do not get that sense of justice.
It's a shame. It is a shame. Fingers crossed. Watch this space. And that was this week's news. We did have a lot of bikes this week.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And now the big question. That's the best button. It's not the greatest noise, but it's the best button.
Best button, absolutely.
So, with many of people out there buying new bikes or getting into riding, we thought we'd have a look this week on different ways to buy a bike. So this week's big question is, how do you buy yours? Let's look at a few different options. Ian.
So, buy new or used, up to 3 years old on PCP. Yeah. PCP, Personal Contract Plan, is what it stands for, if anybody doesn't know. As opposed to, I think that was an old 1980s name for some sort of drugs, wasn't it? PCP.
I'll bet your superior knowledge on that.
I know, I'm just thinking about the film. There's the film Trading Places, remember Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd?
There is.
He says something about angel dust or something like that,
it.
PCP. Anyway, so PCP is nothing to do with that. It's Personal Contract Plan. So how does it work? You pick a bike, new or nearly new or used, up to 3 years old. Minimum price of 1,500 quid. And then you set your terms, usually between 24 to 48 months. If you want to do the maths, that's 2 years up to 4 years. Just there you go. How many miles will you do each year? And this will affect your monthly payment because there's a final value kind of thing. You know,
guaranteed value, a minimum guaranteed value or something.
Most of the time, it's between 4,000 and 6,000 miles. You'll see it all the time if you're looking to buy a car. You see there's a mileage thing, and quite often you'll see, you know, that is an incredible price for a car, and then you realise I'm not allowed to do any more than 4,000 miles a year in my car, and you go, I can do that in a month.
Aye, and I think most people listening will know or should know what PCP is, because a lot of people do buy their cars on it, and it's exactly the same for motorbikes. I think, but for those that don't,
Aye, for those who don't, aye, absolutely. Deposit, if any, then your salesman will play with the numbers in terms of final payment to get your repayment to a budget that's suitable for you.
I love that. Play with the
Play with the
numbers.
numbers.
hang
Within
on,
reason.
I'll go and ask my
Within
manager.
reason. Yeah, exactly. So,
Any salesman out there, we apologise. We're not demeaning
no, absolutely not.
what you guys do.
We appreciate there's
aye.
wiggle room. At the end of your contract term, you can either pay the final payment figure, part exchange, or you just hand the bike back, assuming it's in good condition and within the mileage. And you can literally go, thanks very much, that was great. I had that bike for 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, whatever it was. And it was great fun. Cheers, bye. And you just literally hand it back. Yeah. So here's an example for you. Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro. Gets a really good write up. I've looked at that myself. Lovely bike. £13,100. You would put down a £2.5 deposit or £2,648 deposit. 4,000 miles per year. With an optional final payment or guaranteed value of £6,520, 36 months at £165. Brand new Tiger 900 for £165 a month. It's good for those in a budget that want a new bike and are happy that they never own the bike without a big payment at the end, or know they're going to trade up in a few years.
Just in case your wife's listening, that's a brand new Tiger. Only £165 a month.
Yeah, exactly. It's good, as I say, good for those in a budget. Things to be aware of, though. You never own that bike unless you pay the final payment. You must be fully comp on your insurance, so that's going to up your costs. Your excess mileage costs can apply and could be expensive. Do you don't know off the top of your head, Dan, roughly what your excess mileage costs are? 12 pence a mile or something like that?
It varies depending on, well, where you go, who you go to, who the finance broker is, or who the PCP broker is, but it can be anywhere from 4 pence a mile up to 12 pence a mile or 12.5 pence a mile. Damage
to the bike affects its guaranteed future value, obviously, and repossession is a risk if you don't keep paying, because it's not your bike, it's never your bike.
So, PCP.
I mean, see, when I went to get my Triumph, I remember looking at that. One of the things I thought was quite good, and I'm pretty sure it's PCP it's with. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure with PCP though you can pay more to it.
You can tweak.
You can tweak your payments.
You can tweak,
but there's like a maximum you can pay to it. But it works out the cost of your optional final payment. So if you wanted to add a bit extra a month on, you could start paying off your optional final payment. So when it gets to the end of your
you can just
you don't have that final payment anymore.
Because it's good. I think there's so many things you can do with PCP in terms of you could pay a larger deposit, which I know a lot of guys or salesmen would discourage you from doing because it's not something you're going to get back. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Other than unless you knew for a fact you were going to trade it in.
Aye, if I was going to take my bike, if I was going to take my street cup in, right, that's paid. It's just there's no finance on it or anything. It's a paid up bike. That would be my deposit, which is, it's going to be more than £2.5 grand.
So £2.5 grand.
So,
but then that means that you could keep the final option and reduce the monthly
payment.
Probably
less than 100.
Less than 100 quid. Or
for a Triumph 900 GT Pro.
Or exactly.
In case who's listening.
Aye. Or you keep paying that, and it means your optional final payment would be less.
Aye, exactly.
I mean, so you can tweak it as much as you.
Or I could just have two bikes.
See, I've been in that position, and I'm always an advocate of that. You know what I mean? Just as long as they're completely two different bikes. So I had an adventure bike and a Harley, completely two different bikes.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean? You'd have an adventure bike, and then your Tron bike, as I'm going to call it.
I have a Tron bike.
Two different bikes.
Easily
two different bikes.
What's next though? Because I used to get these confused between PCP and
hire purchase.
So
buying a hire purchase, classic hire purchase is where you pick whatever bike you like up to, I think it's 12 years old usually. You pay a deposit and then you spread what's left over an agreed period between 12 months to 60 months, so a year to 5 years. At the end of that agreement, you pay one last monthly instalment and the bike's yours, done and dusted. Much simpler contract, and you own the bike at the end. So you can pay a deposit and reduce the monthly cost, but ultimately you're taking whatever the cost of that bike is. So if that bike's 10 grand, you are just splitting up how you pay that 10 grand. Yeah. You pay a large deposit, it means you get less to spread over the term of the agreement. Things you need to be aware of with hire purchase. You need to be fully comp insurance during the contract.
Yeah.
The finance company own the bike right up until your last payment. Repossession is still a threat if you don't keep up the payments. And you don't have any protection against the bike's depreciation. Unlike PCP, where you've got that minimum guaranteed value.
So
hire purchase, you don't.
No, it's just
so if you get a bike at 10 grand let's take the Tiger. Right, so you take that Tiger, and you pay that deposit. You pay that 165 again, only £165 a month if you're listening over the 3 years, and then you get a minimum guaranteed value of 652 whatever. On hire purchase, you need to pay a much larger deposit.
Yeah.
To get that to £165 a month.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the 3 years, you'd pay your last £165 a month, and the bike would be yours. However, the bike might not be worth £6,520. It might be worth £5,000,
Mm-hmm.
and you're £1,500 down on depreciation. Right. Whereas with the PCP, you've always got that minimum guaranteed value.
I mean, PCP is designed. Let's be honest. We're no stupid. It's designed for you to go in and buy a new bike.
It's to get a new, but I wouldn't have the bike I've got if it wasn't for PCP.
It's designed for you to say, I'm getting near the end of my term, take it in, and they wiggle your numbers to get you another bike or car. Yeah, and for people that like to just know budget things, I think PCP is a great thing because you know what your monthly payment is, as long as you can afford the payments. And that's very important. Don't ever take something out that's a stretch for these kind of things because of all the risks, like repossession and all these kind of things.
And your credit score and all that kind of stuff. It's just you're absolutely right. It's not worth the risk. But
and I don't. I would probably not mention it as much, but there's a shortfall if something happens to your bike.
GAP. I can't remember what GAP stands for, but essentially, you're right. If you buy a £10,000 bike, drive it to the showroom, it's instantly £1,000 cheaper.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have a smash at the very first runabout and the bike was a write-off,
you're not going to get
you're going to get the market value back for that, which is only £9,000. Right. But you mean you're still paying £10,000? Mm-hmm. That GAP insurance bridges what's in between. So that would be the extra £1,000. That's a good call. GAP insurance when you're taking out these kind of things is definitely that's both for PCP and hire purchase. Yep. You should be looking at that. What other option have we got?
So third one's the option that actually you can have for just about anything you want to buy. I mean, obviously I'm not into a bike, but if you want to buy yourself, a Fabergé egg, and you can get one for less than 25 grand.
Is that the one with the toy in the middle?
That's the one with the toy in the middle. Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Fabergé surprise. Well, if it's James Bond, it's got some sort of secret agency thing in the middle, is it not?
Or a button.
Aye.
That we don't know what it does.
And we'll never find out. It's a personal loan. Yeah, personal loan. You can borrow anywhere between 400 to 25 grand. Usually, that's pretty much your standard personal loan rates, isn't it?
Yep.
Payment term can be anything from 12 months to 60 months, sometimes more, depending on the lender. So there is people out there that will, that will give you a longer term, but you tend to find that their interest rates are higher, and you actually end up spending a lot more.
Aye, although during the end of the first lockdown, see the minute we came out of the first lockdown, there was some cracking deals on personal loans out there.
There was, that's true.
It was frightening.
I know.
Some of the deals that was happening.
But then your credit rating had to be phenomenal to get them.
Aye. Absolutely.
It's fixed monthly instalments, and on the last payment, the loan agreement ends. And there's no deposit needed. You get the money into your bank account, then you can go in and pick up your bike and pay cash for it, and the bike is yours. The minute you walk out, the loan is unsecured. That doesn't require the bike to be handed back or anything like that.
Aye.
So if something goes wrong, the trouble with a personal loan is you can't terminate the agreement.
No, you can't. The option but to pay it back.
You've got to pay it back, whether you've still got the bike or not. If somebody steals your bike the next day, you've got to pay that personal loan back.
All they saying guys are in a transit van with bats.
Aye, exactly. Aye.
Depending on your lender, of course.
Exactly, depending on your lender. Aye. You've got no protection against bike depreciation. Again, as we said, look, if the bike's scrapped, if the bike's nicked, if anything happens to that bike, you're still paying that loan. Yeah. But then you're not tied into having to make sure that you get the right insurance or all those kind of things because you're not protecting
and
the lender's money.
Exactly. There's I've done a personal loan thing once where we'd been saving up for a car and then got a personal loan to top it up. Knowing fine well this was going to be a car that we were going to keep for a while.
Aye.
Because it was the whole, the kids were really young and it was the whole family thing. And there's nothing like, I don't even think I walked into a showroom. We walked into a different showroom and test drove. And then I phoned in the two competing showrooms and got the best price. And then went, I'll take it on the phone. The first time I met the saleswoman was the day I went to pick it up with a banker's draft.
Oh, that's old school, isn't it?
Aye, totally. And there's no better feeling than going in with essentially what is a check, just to go, there you go. It was like, that was the moment where I thought, yeah, I definitely need to be a lottery winner. So there is that. But what I will say is I've been in the position where I've written a car off and still had to pay for it. And still, I mean, it wasn't a lot, but there was still a couple of £100 left to pay on it.
Aye.
And that's a kicker. You're paying for a car that I technically don't own anymore because it's been scrapped.
Aye. I mean,
Just heartbreaking.
when I didn't owe any money on it, which was great. But when my first Suzuki got run over by a truck while it was parked outside my house, right?
Okay.
It was written off, and
I love the way you just casually slipped into a conversation.
aye,
When my Suzuki got crushed by a truck.
well, I was a Toyota Hilux, so anyway.
Oh, well, yeah.
Thank you very much again to my neighbour for taking down the registration of that cab as it drove away. So
Oh, did it smash it and just keep going?
I just went away.
In
But
fairness.
they actually got out of the car, looked at it,
Oh, did they?
and then just drove away.
It's not as if he hit it and went, oh, I must have clipped the curb there. You know what I mean?
I mean,
He
if he'd
went,
just driven away with it going out the car, but the very fact that they went out the car, saw it was now lying in its side, crushed, and then anyway, the money you get back on the bike, you cannot buy the same bike for
No.
that amount of money,
No.
you know, and you're just like, it's a kicker. You're right. So to have that money back, and then if that was on finance, you'd be like that. Well, that's it. Here's my £1,800 back from my insurance company, but I owe £2,500. You just be like, all because someone else.
Aye, because
bandit, you know
somebody
what I
else
mean?
wasn't paying attention.
Aye.
And that's, I suppose, that's the difference between like PCP
Mhm.
or some sort of finance contract
Yep.
that's against the bike.
Yeah.
Is at least you get an element of protection in that
Yeah.
case. Yeah,
And if you've got
wait,
your gap insurance in there, you know.
then you're sorted. You're then just there you go, bum bum bum, and there you go, and you can either get another one or change model
Yeah.
or.
And I think
something, 'cause-
there's like gap insurance that will take up the price to get you another one of the
Aye.
same age, but there's insurance products out there that will get you
Oh, there's loads of insurance. Aye,
get a new one if you
loads
want.
of
You know what I
insurance
mean?
products.
You know, so
Aye,
but read the small print and everything. Final one.
save your pennies. I mean, that's the other option.
Mhm.
Well, there's other options. There's win the lottery. Do you know what I mean?
Rob a
There's-
bank.
Aye, there's. You mean wait for a wealthy relative to, I dare say it, either give you or pass on to the next life. But essentially, if you mean saving your own money, putting it by every week,
Yeah.
and
And actually, I can imagine. I mean, I've never done that, but I can imagine the ability to save it. If you save the money up for your, say, you managed to save up 15 grand and walked in and just handed a check over for your Pan American, you'd be like, that'd be a lovely feeling.
aye, that'd be. I think it'd be a hard, well deserved feeling. Do you know what I mean? But I think
Yeah.
the fact that you saved it up, and it would say it's taken you 2 or 3 years to save that money up. I think it'd be quite hard to part with it because you've held on to it that long and you've watched it
Aye,
grow
totally.
and grow.
It's a typical thing, isn't it? When you've got a lot of money in your wallet and you go to shop and you can't find anything, but when you're skint,
You can everything's
in the
attractive.
shops.
Aye, exactly.
It's great.
So
Yeah.
aye, saving out your money. So again, as we've said, short of winning the lottery or robbing a bank. You mean the good thing is you're not going to be in debt saving.
Aye.
Circumstances change.
Mhm.
You've always got that money there. You're no left with a bike that can't help pay the mortgage. You can always
Aye.
dip into your savings. You're less inclined to probably overspend if you're saving money. On the flip side, though, there's probably more chance of you sacrificing your dream bike. So, say my dream bike is 20 grand, right?
Mhm.
Say it's a Ducati Diavolo, 20 plus grand, and I'm saving up for it. By the time I'm getting to about the 12, 15 grand mark, I'm thinking, wow, there's a lot of nice bikes out there for that kind of money. I could
Aye.
go and buy a Pan America. I could go and buy a wee Bobber Black. I could go and buy a. The
Mhm.
chances of you going, do you know what? I can't be asked saving for another year to get that. I'm probably just going to go and buy that one.
Yeah.
So you're probably more inclined to sacrifice your dream bike because of the
I
saving.
think so. I think you're right, and you know, unless you've got a job that you can save 15 grand up in a couple of months, you know what I mean? But then
Who's getting that kind of job?
don't know. I think so. It's probably no legal anyway. But I think you're right. So I mean, certainly for me, we live in a culture now where you budget for these kind of things. So if you're going to budget for these kind of things, in my opinion, take the ones with the best protection, whether it's PCP or HP. You know, if you think, Matt, I can afford £150 a month, you know.
Yep.
But also remember, when you're doing that, you've got to pay for your insurance, you've got to pay for your,
Mhm.
you know, your service and all these kind of things. So take that into consideration.
Aye,
as
and I've
well.
yet to see bike either franchise or manufacturer or showroom
Give you the free service and stuff and all that.
throw in exactly because you're looking, you go buy a car. There's certain deals out there that you can buy the car and it comes with all the the servicing that comes with 2 years insurance and all that. Cause
Or you can buy a servicing package.
exactly, and it's all thrown in to this easy one monthly payment. I've yet to see a bike, and maybe I just haven't been looking, but I've yet to see a bike company go, well, do you know what? You take this bike on a 3-year deal. We'll throw in free servicing for the 3 years, and we'll throw you in your first year's insurance.
I've also yet to see a bike service that is cheap.
Oh God, aye.
You know, when you're servicing a new bike, you've got to obviously go to the dealership, and you know it's not a cheap thing.
No.
So people will say, I don't want to put people off, obviously, but
It's something you need to factor in.
If you're listening and you're convincing your other half that I want to get a bike because it's cheaper to run and all that, maybe get them to go and make you a cup of coffee or something just now before we say this. So we'll give you a couple of seconds. On you go. Send them through. Get them to get you a quick coffee. Brilliant. Okay, have they all gone? Amazing. Right. It's no cheaper, is it? Let's be honest, guys. But who cares? Because we love our bikes.
Aye, exactly.
But if anyone asks, of course it's cheaper.
Aye,
okay?
you mean again, depending on what bike you buy, you're right. Servicing, you're going to need to factor it in because after 1,000 miles, you've got a service,
and it's a biggie,
which could be
it's all the time,
300-400 quid, depending on what bike you buy.
Absolutely,
and then
at least every year.
And then if you do another 6,000 miles, which is easily done if you've only got one bike, 6,000 miles is easily done. There you go. There's another service, which is again is going to be.
I mean, I know the Triumphs now. That's a 10,000 mile service interval.
Oh, that's good. So you get your 1,000-mile really break-in service,
or a year. So so think to yourself, you've got your 1,000, you've got your first break-in service, and then it's 10,000 miles
or a year.
So unless you're really hammering that bike, you're servicing once a year.
To me, again, including it as part of the deal, and you probably can buy a service pack for the bike. I'm sure there will be that.
It was never discussed with me when I bought my Triumph.
I can't remember. I don't think it was discussed with me when I bought my Beamer. I think it might have done when I bought my Harley. We might have talked about it.
I mean, Harley are super customer focused, aren't they? So I suppose it's the kind of thing, if anyone's going to offer it, I would expect Harley or somebody to offer it. I mean, it'll still cost money.
But I think overall, though, I think it's still cheaper. They did offer you gap insurance, and I think legally, from a financial thing, they have to offer you the gap insurance, and if you don't want it, you need to waiver it and all that kind of good stuff. So
of course, yeah, I think you're right. I think from that point of view, but it's a trick. I think maybe a lot of people are either missing or are going to have to start thinking about if competition gets tight again. Because if dealerships are going into administration or having to move their premises because they can't afford X, Y, and Z.
Well, I think
it's just those kind of things that have to drag you back into that showroom.
I think so, and I think just with the biker community getting larger, and I think it definitely has getting larger since the start of lockdown. I think a lot more people have taken to CBTs and big bike tests and all that kind of good stuff. Either because, one, it's a cheaper mode of transport and they didn't want to do public transport, or they didn't want to rely on it in case it went to lockdown if they've been key workers, etc. I know we've talked about this loads in the news. Or it's whether they've had that disposable income that they've went, do you know what, life's too short, there's a pandemic. I go to the gym 4 times a week, I'm as fit as a fiddle, but there you go, I could have got that virus and I could have been
floored
in the hospital, floored respectively. And then obviously not having holidays that year, they've got disposable income, and they're then suddenly going, well, I've got a disposable income, life's too short, I'm going to go in debt. And they've went out,
or they're just not going out as much, they're just not spending as much money, so they've got the money sitting there. You think, actually, going out and getting hammered every weekend with my mates, I'm not missing it as much as the media would have you believe. But there's lots of people out there that are not missing Fridays and Saturday night sessions in the pub and going out, and they're actually not missing it, and they're appreciating simpler things, and being out on the road on your own on a bike. For all these are technically advanced machines, it's a simple, amazing feeling just to
there's nothing like it. Do you know what I mean? Nothing like it. But I'd be interested to see, based on how much the market's share or how much the market's grown versus possible companies in administration, what the deals are like out there. And again, with everybody bringing out new bikes, and they're all, I don't want to say much of muchness because they're not really, but again, if you went out with 15 grand, there's a whole rake of different bikes you could get.
Incredibly good bikes you could get, absolutely, and it's really...
Do you know what I mean?
But what differentiates one bike from the other? And it's going to be all these add-ons. It's going to have to be all these add-ons coming in.
Well, you take the two we talked about today, or two of the two we talked about today, are the two adventure bikes, the
Aye.
KTM one and the Harley one, right? They're both roundabout roughly the same
Roughly the
price.
same performance, you know.
Geared to roughly the same performance, etc. I guarantee they'll have all the same kind of tech. I mean, they both get touchscreen TFTs and all that kind of good stuff. They'll both have ABS and traction
Cruise
control and
stuff,
rider modes and all this kind of stuff. So the only thing that's then differentiating it is either one bike really doesn't feel great to the rider, which can happen. I know when I went to buy my first 125, I looked at the Yamaha and I looked at KTM. The KTM just wasn't comfy for me. The Yamaha was. I think when you get to the bigger bikes, it's slightly different because the seats are bigger, tires are bigger. You mean everything?
But still, you get a sense. I mean, I've after my Suzuki, I had a Ninja, you know, and I was never as comfortable in the Ninja as I was on the Suzuki. You know what I mean, and it's it's just a feel of it. Yeah, the Ninja was a bigger bike, a more powerful bike. You think a lot sexier.
It should be. Would you call it?
You know, in that sense. But for some reason, it just didn't feel like my bike. You know, in the way that the Suzuki did.
If both bikes feel exactly the same, though, it then comes down to what is the best deal, what is the most attractive deal, and that's where the garages are going to need. Because I think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to get to a point where if you're in the market for a sports tour or an adventure bike, a sports bike,
they're all going to have the same toys. They're all going to have the same feel to them.
Aye, it's going to be. It's going to get to a point where it's going to be either completely night and day. You're going to hate it or you're going to love it. Right, one versus the other, or you're going to love both. When you get to that point where you're going to love both, or even one slightly different from the other, that's where they're going to need to get really competitive to say, well, hang on, we've got this deal, and it might be lower APR, it might be servicing included, it might be first year's free insurance, which to people nowadays, especially new bikers, the insurance might be a clincher.
Absolutely, because even,
do you know what I mean?
Even, you know, 24, 25-year-old, if it's your first year on a bike, the insurance is expensive.
Well, I didn't realise how, obviously coming late to biking, I just thought, this is great, it's so much cheaper. But obviously I was a mature rider, you know what I mean, in terms of I came to it really late. But you're right, I think one of the guys for the IAM group had put in the WhatsApp group this week that I think his son had passed his CBT and went to look at 125. Now, I don't know what age his son is, but I'm assuming he's in that bracket. 1,200 quid for insurance. 1,200 quid
on a 125
for insurance to be on a 125.
That's a lot. That's a lot of money for a younger guy.
That's 100 quid a month.
It's probably cost his bike.
Insurance. It's nuts. Absolutely nuts. It's not even 100 quid a year. 100 quid a month. It's like what? But then again, that's this was the advantage of being an older rider.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think even if he didn't do CBT and went straight to being a car, I think his insurance would still be the same. It's an age thing.
It's an age thing, yeah, absolutely right.
Do you know what I mean?
I think
you factor that on top of a personal loan to buy a 125 or a higher purchase.
Plus a gap insurance, plus a, you know, and then on top of that, you then get your service plan to pay for. Or you've then got to go walk in once a year and shell 300 or 400 quid out for a service.
It then becomes 200 quid a year, your insurance and all that added on to it, plus your consumables and whatnot. It's not that cheap.
No.
And if your missus or partners just came back in with a coffee at this point,
it's honestly one of the most.
We're all lying. It's cheap. It's the best thing ever.
Cheapest chips. Get it.
Yeah.
You know,
everybody should be doing it. For me personally, I think it depends as well as what route do you start out on. If that makes sense. For me, I started on a PCP route, so it's just easier to stay in the PCP route.
That's why it's there. It gets you in that. You know what you're paying every month, and you just go, that's fine. And you just update your bike.
Every couple of years. Well, you mean couple of years.
You have a couple of months for you.
Aye. No. Every couple of years, it means you can go and change your bike and you can haggle the latest deal on the latest bike and be riding it on a brand new whatever it is you want to ride it on that month, and that's the attractive bit. It does mean though that the bike's never really mine, and any mods that I make to it, I ideally need to put them back to the way they were. Or I'm making all these mods to bikes. Like my last Harley, I made loads of mods to that.
You bought loads of bits and bobs.
I bought loads of bits and bobs, you know what I mean, the expensive foot pegs and whatever, you know what I mean, the sissy bar, the whole shooting match. And that just goes with a bike, because it's not as if I can transfer them onto a BMW.
No.
Or, a Royal Enfield.
It doesn't change the value of your bike, that's the thing. It's nice to have it at time, but it doesn't change the value. It's the equivalent of spending that extra money in your car to get the panoramic sunroof or the panoramic roof. Costs you an extra £500 or £600, you know, and then you take it to trade it in and they go, but it's got that panoramic roof, and they go, and that means nothing.
Aye,
Sorry.
it doesn't matter. It's just four wheels and an engine and a chassis. Thanks for that. It's again, I suppose it's good that there's that many different varieties of payment options out there. Because not every you can't pigeonhole everybody. I know a lot of people that don't like PCP. They absolutely hate it with a passion.
Absolutely, yeah.
But again, different strokes for
you're
different
right,
folks.
but I think if I'm lucky and my bike's paid off and everything. It's my bike, so I've got options when I decide to upgrade that. But because it's my bike, I don't really want to get rid of it.
You've only got one option: buy a second bike.
Exactly. So
I thought we'd established that.
Well, that's true. That's very true. It's
£165 a month for a Tiger. That's but
if you listen, Susan, and so, but you're right. It's
his wife is so not listening to this podcast this week. I'm telling you that
absolutely.
right now.
I'm going to tell her we didn't record it. Didn't work. Those technical issues. See that wee button you've got for when people swear. Just go over it and press it every time I mention that. I think for me, because a bit like the feeling you've got of you owning that bike outright makes me kind of really reluctant to move on to something different. Move on to a PCP or an HP or whatever.
See,
and that, so I'll probably keep that bike a long time. I love the bike,
and you get that, but that's where you get the value. That's where you're getting the most value for money out of that bike, because it'll get to a point where its depreciation almost
stops.
It stops and it levels out, and it then becomes the depreciation, especially with your bike, because they don't make yours anymore. Well, they still make Bonnies, but they don't do the Street Cup anymore. Your bike, then the depreciation's almost slowed down.
Yeah.
And actually its value will start to, at some point, I would think the value will overleap. Now, whether that's 20 years down the line or whether that's 5 years down the line, you don't know, but you would imagine that it'll start to kind of jump across. I know there was a couple of years ago, I went into Triumph, believe it or not, across the road, and they had a CCM Spitfire, right? And it was the Scrambler one.
I remember that one.
Right
in there. Sitting in the showroom.
It was
a limited edition. That one with the limited edition.
Well, technically they're all limited edition, because the way they get around about the Euro compliance things is they only make lotted amounts. So the Spitfire Scrambler, I think it was in there, and it was a tall ass bike. It was a big thing, right? But it was stunning.
That was gorgeous.
Absolutely stunning.
Gorgeous.
They had it in there for, I think it was 11,999, and they dropped it to 10,999. That bike was 8 months old, had 2,000 or 3,000 miles on it, and it had one owner. That owner would have bought that bike for £9,800. And that just shows you, that to me is because they're only making
so many
X amounts, it means that they hold their value so much better. I mean, now it could be they were just bumping the price up because it was absolutely stunning looking. It was a thing of beauty. But you go looking for a Spitfire, not a new one, because you can buy them new still for CCM, but you go looking for a Spitfire, a used one, they're still about the same price as buying a brand new one.
Aye.
So why would you not just buy a brand new one, and then you can run it about and you probably get your money back on it if you sell it privately? Yours, I think, will do the same thing. I think it'll get to a point where the depreciation will halt, or it'll not drop any lower, and you'll actually probably find that the market value of that bike will go up. One, because they don't make it anymore, and two, it is a lovely looking thing, and it's a Triumph. You'll always get spare parts for it.
Aye, exactly. Aye.
So and you'll not get that with PCP. You'll get it with HP if you see it through to its conclusion. You know what I mean? So the only way to do that is to either buy the bike and pay it outright, or walk in with a check or whatever and just go, I'm having that bike.
The one thing I would say though I liked about the PCP, certainly when I was discussing Triumph before it was bought outright, was the fact that you can pay off that value, that final value if you want. But I thought it was interesting that you couldn't pay off the loan bit of it. You could only pay off up to the value of the final payment over the period.
Aye.
So say the final payment was I don't know, £6,000, right? Yep. Then you can only pay off a maximum of £1,500 each year.
There's always got to be you're right.
But then that's probably quite good if you've got a job that like you can get more work, or you can get more shifts and stuff on. So you've got a job, you do your 5 days a week, but there's loads of overtime and stuff you can earn. So you're like, well, I'm just going to rattle in for a month of overtime and pay a big chunk of this final payment off, and that's probably where PCP is quite a nice option, where when you get extra money in, you just chuck it into that final payment.
Yep.
And just bring that down and bring that down and bring that down, and you either bring it down so that you've got a better deposit for your next bike, or you
Yep.
bring it right down to the point that you own the bike.
Or
at the
your
end of the
final
thing.
payment's like £1,000,
Or
1,500 quid or
or
whatever.
you can upgrade a year earlier.
Aye.
You know, you can
Because
trade in a
what
year
you
earlier.
technically own in the loan part is counteracted by what you've paid in and stuff like
Aye.
that. Aye. Aye, I mean, there's options for that point of view. Do you know what I mean? I just think PCB is a great way for people who have that or need that control on knowing exactly what's going in and what's going out every month. There you go. And
But make it affordable.
aye, and but want the nice bike, but don't want to pay £400 or £500 a month for it.
Aye.
Do you mean so that in 3 years' time they can say it's completely outrightly theirs, knowing fine well when they get to the end of that term, they're probably just going to trade it in anyway.
Yeah. Aye, absolutely. And remember, if you are looking at a bike and thinking of those options, all the bike manufacturers' pages have calculators for all these things.
Aye,
So
that's
you get a real
I
sense.
think
of
that's the
what
one
you-
thing
what
that's
you need.
been a good thing over the last number of years is they've started to put these finance calculators on there so that you can kind of play about with yourself, so you get a rough idea, and that way you know.
Yeah, but always remember they're always just a rough idea as
I
well.
still go into the showroom and haggle.
Go into showroom and haggle, but also if you've not got a brilliant credit rating, you might find you're an extra £10 or £15 a month because it's a different company that takes on your payment or something like that.
Aye, because you
know-
might find it's a different finance group. that they
Aye,
use.
exactly different. So everything's all. Don't take it as read. Any of these things. I think very very rarely, even if you've got a brilliant credit rating, do you ever pay less than they tell you. But certainly expect it to be a few pounds more, depending on. So if you're a young guy getting in to buy a bike, you'll probably find that actually you're £165 for your Tigers, maybe 172, because your credit it's all about
And I think the other thing as well is shop a bit.
shop
I
about.
mean, don't
And
go,
maybe that's where the personal loan option actually works better for you. You might get a better personal loan.
well, exactly,
well.
because there's no guarantee that the same, unless the manufacturer has its own, like if they're funding it,
Aye.
if they've got their own finance behind it, then you might find it's the same across the board. But even at that, still shop about,
Mhm.
because you might find somebody is actually doing like a dealership contribution. So
Aye.
you might find that you could go walk into two completely different Triumph garages. One's owned by one group, one's owned by another group, and Group B are actually saying, well, if you buy a brand new Bonnie for the month of April, we'll throw in a £1,200 contribution from us, the dealership. I know the manufacturers do those
Yeah, they
things
do
as
do
well,
that
but a
sometimes.
lot of that can then hinge on you putting it. It means you can add a wee bit extra into the deposit, which brings your monthly payment down or puts up your annual mileage. And
Stick a couple extra wee toys on it.
exactly. And I think the other thing about PCP with annual mileage is they must be snookered this year, because the annual mileage for, say, a 3-year PCP deal and you're allowed to do 5,000 miles a year, at the end of your term,
Mhm.
you can't have any more than, say, 15,000 miles on the bike. And that, if you are, that's when you get charged, say,
Mhm.
10
Aye,
pence
so
a mile
you
or
don't have
whatever.
to do 5,000 a year. You can do 1,000 one year and 14,000 in the next 2 years. Do you know what I mean?
Aye. And I think us being in lockdown and very few people going big tours on their bikes, I think there'll be a lot of people will have reduced mileage on their bike. I'll be interested to see what that does to the market value on used bikes when you come to trade it in.
Aye.
If you're going in and going, well, I've got this, you know what I mean, in a year's time, you're going to go, I've got this 2019 bike, that's my term up. I was supposed to do 15,000 miles in 3 years. However, it's only done 10,000 and 5,000 miles short. Does that mean the value of the bike goes up, or are they going to offset that, knowing fine well that we were in lockdown and all the bikes will be in the same boat?
That'll be interesting.
That'll
to
be
see.
interesting.
That will be interesting to see.
Maybe we need to get a salesman in to try, or a sales manager, or a franchise owner in to pick their brain.
Yeah. Get out there listening. You want to join
They
in?
might not tell us, right
Aye,
enough.
no,
They'll
absolutely.
be like, jog on.
Aye.
I'm going to share with the
Or we'll
world.
just say, well, actually, in my franchise, the deals will be really good. So pop in.
Exactly. You never know.
Nice.
But I don't think there's much at a conclusion, because I think it's...
Personal choice. It's personal
I think it is
circumstances
personal.
more than anything
It's-
else.
so- aye.
It's not even personal choice. It's more circumstances,
Aye. I think...
mean, if your budget's £100 a month and HP's £175 a month, you're going to look at PCP.
Aye, that's exactly it. If you want the latest brand new shiny...
You used to call it balloon financing, didn't it? It used to be like the old term for it, wasn't it?
Was that for the actual finance agreement, or was that for the people taking it?
A bit of both, to be honest.
I have no idea.
I think it was a mixed
I think my
message.
first ever car was on a balloon finance agreement. Can't remember. It was that long ago. Aye. I don't think there's a conclusion, because I think each to their own. If you're willing to take a bike that's a couple of years older and pay it outright, then go for it.
Aye.
If you want the latest and shiniest bike but don't have a great budget, PCP might be the way to go.
I mean, at what
Who
point
knows?
is technology going to get to that point where you're not going to get much better? So a 2-year-old bike isn't going to have much less toys than a brand new bike.
Well, aye, that's the thing. Unless tech comes, well, and saying that, it's the new RT, the new version of mine, is now got this adaptive cruise control. Don't know if I trust it, but it's those wee things that are going to come. But I think you're right. I think cruise control and TFTs and all that kind of stuff will become standard at some point.
Absolutely,
Being
but I think to me, I know I talked about my wee plastic switch, right? But the cruise control thing, my wee plastic handle.
Aye.
But for me, being on a bike is about being in control of the bike, no letting the bike control itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at what point are all these toys just going to be things that you go, I'm not going to use them anyway?
Until you use it the first time and go, oh my God, how did I live without this?
Absolutely, totally is that,
Like how hold control.
Oh, hold, I think I'm up for that. I'm totally up for that. That's genius. Do you know what I mean?
Slap. Oh, this is great. I can write.
That is genius.
Stretch the fingers. There you go. Away. Well, okay, it was a kind of damp squib conclusion, but it is what it is.
I think the conclusion is, if you want a bike, you can get a bike. There's many ways to get a bike. So if you want one, explore them all and get a bike.
And remember, it is still the cheapest mode of transport, without a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely. It's fantastic, economical, environmentally friendly.
Cheap to service, cheap to insure, etc.
Exactly. And also, you look really cool.
I've got nothing else to add to that. I'm just going to leave it there. That's it. Episode 3, done and dusted. Again, a huge thanks from me and Ian for listening to the ramblings of two average bikers in a cave this week and last week and the week before. Again, your support for each episode is absolutely overwhelming. A massive thank you to the lovely listeners out there for supporting us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys.
And remember, these are just the opinions of two average bikers.
And obviously, we were talking about finance here. Under no circumstances do we give anybody any financial advice whatsoever.
No,
not at all. If anybody comes knocking on the door, none of this was advice.
Yes, speak to a responsible adult.
Exactly, yeah. So, which probably means know somebody with a bike. So, anyway, a massive thank you from us all here at the Average Bikers in a Cave. If you enjoyed it, please share, and more importantly, subscribe. And if you want to get in touch with questions or a possible big question, then please email us at averagebikersinacave@outlook.com, or get in touch via our Facebook page or Instagram. So we'll see you in the next episode. So until next time, remember,
only a biker understands why a dog sticks his head out the window.
Oh.